I've been building my own kingdom for everyone to see. It exists to keep me safe from harm, and it's intact to glorify me. Nobody helped me build this up. It was me and me alone. I've appointed myself as the king, and I've given myself the throne. But it turns out I'm no ruler, and I have no control. So I have decided to destroy it all. I'm tearing down the walls, kicking down the doors. Everything inside this kingdom is yours. 'Cause what I've made is worthless, and it cannot stand. Come and breathe some life into my empty, cold, dead ends. Down with the fickle king, away with this fantasy. You are the one I need. Death to the kingdom of me. Death to the kingdom of me. I should probably be frightened. This empire's all I know, but it always does more damage than good. I'm afraid it's gotta go. I know that I can't be trusted, 'cause I'm just a man. And if you hadn't given your life for me, a loser would be all that I am. You know they say just follow your heart. I'm afraid that's a load of trash. Your heart will take you down to deep, dark places where you feel like you'll never come back. So I'm coming out of the dark. This facade is I woke up feeling like it was time to tighten up. Yeah, I woke up feeling like it might be a good day to get it done. That's right. Oh, the stadium is just like my second house. Now I'm two-tone talking, they can't shut my mouth. I woke up feeling like it was time to tighten up. Yeah, 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 yeah. I woke up feeling like it was time to tighten up.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Two-Tone Talk by God Pod, episode 96. Good to see everybody tighten up. It is Friday afternoon, and there is one more preseason game to go. Tennessee Titans, New Orleans Saints coming up this Sunday at, I believe, 2 o'clock Eastern, 1 o'clock Central. It's going to feel like a regular old fall Sunday. Tennessee Titans on in the middle of the day. Going to feel good. Titans, Saints, and the starters, most of the starters are going to play a few possessions. So we're going to talk Titans, Saints, what to look for, who to look for in that final game of the preseason. And the 53-man roster for the Tennessee Titans is scheduled, like every other team, to come out Tuesday afternoon. Out of those 53 possible roster spots, I have 45 no-doubters. I have 45 spots of the 53 that are not even debatable, going to happen. These guys are going to make the roster. And I'm going to tell you who those 45 guys are here in a little bit. But first, we are going to talk Titans, Saints. And it's been an interesting week for the Tennessee Titans. Been an interesting week of practice. Up and down, kind of a roller coaster ride. You know, on, I believe it was Wednesday, the Titans had a very good practice, I believe it was. And they, offense looked good. Everything was going well. Everybody felt good. Sunshine and rainbows. Hooray. And then the next day, apparently, practice was not so great. The offense really struggled, especially in red zone. And, the connection between Will Levis and Calvin Ridley was a little up in the air. And so there were some people worried because one day you had a great practice and the next day it went back down. Some people worried about that. I don't get too worked up. I don't get too worked up about preseason games. I sure don't get too worked up about practices that don't go well. But it is still, it's like I said last week when Will Levis had that day where he struggled against Seattle in the joint practices. Hey, it needs to get fixed. Sure, it needs to get fixed. I don't think it's any reason to totally panic, but it does need to get fixed. It's better to happen now than later, but we got to keep it from happening later. We need to get this under control now. It was an up and down week of practice. The Titans are going to play a lot of their starters against the Saints on Sunday for at least a few possessions. So we'll get to see some of these guys. If you're watching on YouTube, be sure to click the like button. Put me in that algorithm so that more people can watch. If you're listening on Spotify and SoundCloud, I appreciate that as well. So after that up and down week of practice, there were some ups. Tyler Boyd returned to practice, and apparently that was a good thing for the offense. Tyler Boyd was a guy that really shined in practice this week. DeAndre Hopkins set, I believe, to return to practice maybe next week. Still wondering where in the heck L'Jarius Sneed and Cheeto Awuzie are. They have not practiced in a little while, but I'm assuming that they will be making their return to practice hopefully soon. And so there's some good, there's some bad, and there's some ugly that need to be worked out before Chicago in a couple of weeks. We are officially less than 2 weeks away from the start of the NFL regular season. Come on now. It's going to be good. It's going to be a great year. And college football starts this weekend. Is there a better time of year than this? I think not. Let's talk about Sunday. Titans Saints. As I said, starters going to be in the game for a few possessions, Brian Callahan said. Obviously, no DeAndre Hopkins. Some other guys not going to play. But who to watch? Who am I watching Sunday especially? And the first name on the list is a given. It is Will Levis. Will Levis, when he's in there, that's the guy you need to see something from. Because last night, I don't know if anybody watched the Colts. And again, not going to read too much into things that happened in the preseason. But Anthony Richardson, who had a good drive at the start of the game, threw a terrible pick six on the next drive. I would prefer Will Levis not do that against the Saints on Sunday. Even though it's a preseason game, I would like to see Will Levis do a little better than that because now Colts fans are a little worked up, which is hilarious because everybody just assumed Anthony Richardson was awesome based on hopes and dreams, and then he actually had to play last night and he threw a pick six. A bad one. Against, I believe, the second string defense. So I'm watching Will Levis on Sunday. When he played against the 49ers, we saw dump offs to Pollard, Spears. He had the one pass to Ridley where Ridley kind of made the guy miss, got a first down. He didn't do anything wrong in that game against the 49ers, and then obviously he didn't play against the Seahawks. But when he's in there Sunday, I am watching Will Levis. I want to see this guy. He needs to make believers out of people because a lot of people are up in the air on Will Levis. There are a lot of Titans fans up in the air on Will Levis. And last year, it was in such a way that he did some good things. There were some things that he didn't do well. There were some elements around him that were not great that inevitably hurt his game. I understand that. But Sunday, he has an opportunity to put some people's minds a little more at ease going into the regular season. I'm not saying everybody will be convinced that he's the guy if he plays well on Sunday against the Saints in a preseason game, but it will help. It will certainly help people to feel better about him. Not that anybody feels terrible, but he's a question mark. Whether we can all say we believe in Will, and obviously we do, but Will Levis is a huge question mark. Huge question mark. I've said it before. I think this team lives and dies with him. No pressure, Will. But the team kind of lives and dies with him. If he's good, they could be good. If he's bad, they're probably not going to be very good. He's got enough talent around him to help him, so we're going to see. And Sunday, I think we'll get even more of a look at him than we did against the 49ers, and I'm interested to see how he plays. That's the first guy I'm watching. I'm also, of course, going to be watching the offensive line. Showed a lot of promise against the 49ers. Obviously, we're all encouraged about what we've seen so far, but I want to see those starting five, Latham, Skoronski, Cushenberry, Radens, and Nicholas Petit-Frere. I want to see those guys and how they do, because they're a question mark too. And I want to see those guys out there performing well, because the offensive line is just going to have to be better than it's been the last 2 years, especially. It's going to have to. I mean, it's just going to have to be. And so Sunday, I was of the belief that at least some of these guys should have played against the Seahawks. I get why they didn't, because they had the joint practices, and they got their playing time in there. I understand that, but I also understand that these guys need all the reps they can get going into the regular season. So I want to see the starting five making some noise on Sunday. I'm also watching Treylon Burks. Treylon Burks has been quite a polarizing figure among Titans fans this offseason. Just how much is he going to be able to contribute? I'm keeping an eye on Treylon Burks. He had one catch against the Niners, but with Hopkins not in there, I don't think Ridley will be in there too long. Treylon Burks is going to have an opportunity to do something Sunday to show that he's ready to go. And so I'm watching Treylon Burks on Sunday as well. On the defensive side of the ball, you already know I'm keeping an eye on T'Vondre Sweat. T'Vondre Sweat is going to have to be a big-time player for the Titans. T'Vondre Sweat is going to have to bring a punch. I don't know if Jeffrey Simmons is playing on Sunday, but T'Vondre Sweat, we don't have enough depth on that defensive line for him to be a bust. So he's going to have to come in and play well. Against the 49ers, there were probably some nerves. There were probably, he was getting double-teamed a lot. Again, I don't know if Jeffrey Simmons is playing on Sunday, but T'Vondre Sweat's a guy, absolutely, that we're all going to be watching against the Saints, because we want to see some of that stuff that we've heard from practice, that he's wrecking dudes. We want to see some of that in a game. So I'm watching T'Vondre Sweat, and then I'm watching those edge rushers. Jalen Harrell, obviously had a great game against the Seahawks. He's been great in practice and in training camp. So I want to see if he can continue to do that against the Saints, because if he does, we're obviously going to be very excited about him. And another guy I'm watching is Rashad Weaver. Where the heck's he been? Rashad Weaver, to me, I feel like Rashad Weaver has been bypassed by Jalen Harrell, a 7th-round rookie. I feel like Jalen Harrell has come in and jumped over Rashad Weaver on the depth chart. So I don't even know, but Rashad Weaver, with the 53-man roster cuts coming, it would be in Rashad Weaver's best interest to do something on Sunday. All right. So we're going to see. Those are the guys I'm mainly watching, but of course, all over, especially with the starters in, there's going to be some of those pregame nerves, just like there would be in a regular season game, because you want to feel good about those starters. They're going to be playing some against the Saints, so you want to see them do well. And those are some of the guys that I'm especially watching. I told you when we came on today, the 53-man roster cuts are coming on Tuesday. I have 45 of those spots that are a lock. These are 45 of those 53-man spots that to me are not even debatable. These guys are making the roster. We're starting at the top. Will Levis, obviously. Mason Rudolph, obviously. And that's all the locks that I have for the quarterback position. Those are the only two, because there is a third guy that we could talk about here in a little bit, but Will Levis and Mason Rudolph, to me, that's the two that's not debatable. Tajay's running back position, Tajay Spears, Tony Pollard, and Julius Chestnut. I think Julius Chestnut is a lock to make the roster. I think that is absolutely non-debatable to me. I think what he's shown in the preseason, the amount of carries he's gotten in the preseason, I think Julius Chestnut is a lock. Wide receivers, Calvin Ridley, DeAndre Hopkins, Tyler Boyd, Treylon Burks, NWI, and Jaquan Jackson. Locks, not debatable. I don't even think there's going to be any more wide receivers to make the 53-man roster, but those 6 guys, not debatable. I've got 3 tight ends, not debatable. Chig Okonkwo, Josh Wiley, and Nick Vannett. I think Nick Vannett, just, what he brings to the table, I think, the kind of player that they're looking for. I think Nick Vannett, it's not debatable. I think those 3 absolutely making the roster. Offensive line, obviously you have the starting 5. J.C. Latham, Peter Skoronski, Lloyd Cushenberry, Dylan Radins, and Nicholas Petit-Frere. As far as that, other offensive line, now there are going to be more offensive linemen than this make the final cut. But as far as not debatable, these guys are making it, I have 2. Daniel Brunskill and Andrew Rupkich. Those 2 guys I think are not debatable. As far as other offensive linemen that get taken to this team, to the 53-man roster, there will be more. But I think it's debatable on who that's going to be. Brunskill and Rupkich I don't think are debatable. I think they're absolutely making it. Remember, this is my list of guys that it's not even like it's a lock to me. So that's on the offensive side of the ball. That's 21 guys on the offensive side of the ball that I think are a lock. There will be more, and we'll talk about who that could be here in a second, but those guys are a lock. Let's go to defense. Jeffrey Simmons is a lock. Devondre Sweat is a lock. Harold Landry is a lock. Arden Key is a lock. Sebastian Joseph Day is a lock. I think Keandre Coburn is a lock. Because of his ties to Devondre Sweat and because I think he's had such a good preseason and they need all the depth they can get at that position, I think Keandre Coburn is a lock. Jalen Harrell, I think, is a lock. Jack Gibbons, we're to the linebacker position now. Jack Gibbons, obviously a lock. Kenneth Murray is a lock. I think Chance Campbell is a lock. This one may be the most debatable one, but I think that Cedric Gray is a lock. And I understand that a lot of people are like, what? He has been injured, he hasn't been able to play. But that's a 4th-round pick that they had high hopes for. And Tyler Rowland on the Locked On Titans podcast brought up a very good point. They can put Cedric Gray on the roster, and then depending on his injury, they can then move him to IR to make sure that they lock him down, have him there, you put him on the roster, and then you move him to IR if that's what you need. I thought that was a very good point that he made, and I think that's very well what could happen. Otis Reese, I think, is a lock. James Williams, I think, is a lock. We're to the secondary now. L'Jarius Sneed is I'm excited about James Williams, by the way. We haven't talked about him a lot on the pod, but that's a guy that, I mean, if you watch some of the film on him in this preseason, he's been going. I don't even think he quite even understands because he's moved to that linebacker position, so he's still trying to get his bearings. But my guy is flying around. He's a menace out there. We're to the secondary now. L'Jarius Sneed is obviously a lock. Cheeto Awuzie is obviously a lock. Roger McCreary is a lock. Jarvis Brownlee is a lock. Jamal Adams is a lock. Quandre Diggs is a lock. Amani Hooker is a lock. I think Elijah Molden is a lock. I know some people may be like, but I think Elijah Molden is a lock to make the roster. And then on special teams, Nick Folk, Ryan Stonehouse, Morgan Cox. are a lock to make the roster. That's 45 of the 53. Now, who are the names to watch? Because Brian Callahan said there are about 5 to 6 spots that are still open. That's what he said a couple of days ago yesterday. So he's got more open spots than I do. So there are some guys who are locks that I don't even know. Because by my math, I've got 8 open spots. He's saying there's 5. So he's got a few more locks than me. I just don't know who they are. These are the names to watch. I'm going to start on defense. Because Rashid just mentioned him. Trey Avery is certainly an option. Okay. Trey Avery is interesting. Because the fan base is not very high on him. Obviously, we watched plenty of him last year. It left a lot to be desired. Preseason this year, he got burned early against a guy for Seattle that none of us even know who he is. A lot of people don't want Trey Avery to make this roster. I'm worried that he's going to. I'm not worried. I shouldn't say worried, but I think he is probably going to make it. It's debatable. That's why I didn't have him as a lock. But they need the depth. Obviously, I mean, I had 4 corners making the roster. Snead, Awuzie, Brownlee, and McCreary. They're going to need more depth than that. And judging by how much Trey Avery's been playing, he may very well be the guy. Obviously, Caleb Farley, I don't think you could put him on the roster. I mean, he might. Is he going to play Sunday? I don't even know. He came back to practice this week. I don't know. It will be nice to see him out there, but I highly doubt that Caleb Farley's making this roster. So that leaves Trey Avery and Gabe Jeudy-Lally. Now, a lot of people would much rather have Gabe than Trey. But judging by just how much Trey Avery's been playing, I feel like for whatever reason they favor Trey Avery. In fact, I would lean more toward believing that Trey Avery's making this roster than not. But he's certainly not a lock. Maybe he's up in the air. But if Brian Callahan, I've got 8 open spots, here with me. If Callahan's saying he's got 5 open spots, he's got a few more locks than me, and I think Trey Avery might be one of those locks to be a backup corner. I know a lot of people don't want to hear that, but I lean more toward Trey Avery probably making the roster than not, but he's certainly not a lock. Gabe Jeudy-Lally, I think people are more intrigued by him as a backup corner, but I don't feel like the Titans are as intrigued by him. Let's talk about some other possibilities on defense. Obviously, I think you're going to need more edge rush. I had, obviously Arden Key, Harold Landry. I had, that was really the only edge rush guys that I had as a lock. Jalen Harrell as well. Caleb Murphy. He's kind of not. I mean, some people were really high on him last year. I feel like he hasn't done much of anything. Rashad Weaver, we talked about him a second ago. Rashad Weaver's an option, kind of like Trey Avery. I lean more toward him making it than not making it, but I'm certainly more excited about Jalen Harrell than I am about Rashad Weaver right now. I mean, I lean more toward Rashad Weaver probably making the 53-man roster, but I just don't. I'm not jumping for joy because I just don't feel like this guy has shown much of anything this preseason. Obviously, they see him in practice. They may have seen more, but it's certainly debatable to me whether or not Rashad Weaver is going to make this roster or not. And you guys bring up a good point. Now, let's keep in mind other teams are going to be cutting guys, and the Titans might try to grab somebody from somebody else's cuts. Maybe a team who's very heavy in terms of talented corners, that maybe they release a guy that's actually pretty good and the Titans go pick him up. That can always happen at any position. I'm just going with the guys that we know that are here. Rashad Weaver, I'm not sure he makes it. Probably, but I don't know. I'd give him more of a chance than Caleb Murphy. There's guys like Shane Ray as well that we haven't heard too much from. Staying on defense, in the secondary, Eric Garror. I don't think. I don't know. He seems like he is practice squad bound. And then a couple of safeties: Mike Brown, Matt Jackson. Matt Jackson, not to be confused with Matt Jackson of the Young Bucks tag team in AEW wrestling. But Mike Brown, Matt Jackson, I feel like one of these guys, one of these safeties, makes it for depth behind Hooker and Diggs. And obviously you have Molden there as well. I think one of these guys makes it. I know a lot of people are high on Mike Brown as an option. But these are certainly candidates. And these may be guys that they're, wanting to watch till the bitter end. Watch them in that preseason game in the second half on Sunday. See how they do. That's all the options there for defense. Offensively, as far as guys who could round out that offensive depth, first guy I want to talk about is tight end David Martin Robinson. A guy that a few weeks ago when he had a good game against San Francisco, I couldn't even think of his name because I wasn't even familiar with him. But I'm very intrigued by this guy, and I feel like the Titans are too. If you've heard what Brian Callahan has had to say about this guy, if you've heard what some of the other guys, Nick Holes, and what these guys have had to say about David Martin Robinson, they are very high on this guy. And Brian Callahan has blatantly said it is a possibility that we could take 4 tight ends to the main roster. So this David Martin Robinson, I think there is a high possibility that he makes it. His size and speed, he brings a lot to the table, and especially, I feel like Chig Okonkwo has kind of just disappeared. I don't even know, you haven't heard much about him. So I think there's an opportunity there for David Martin Robinson, just like I feel like there's an opportunity for Josh Wiley to move up the pecking order, and he clearly has. There is an option for David Martin Robinson to really come on strong here. So I'm very intrigued by him, and I think there is a very high possibility that David Martin Robinson could make this roster, especially if he puts in a good showing on Sunday against the Saints. Another option, I'm going to throw out the name Hassan Haskins. Not so much as a running back, but I think that Hassan Haskins is one of their best special teams players. I think Julius Chestnut has probably locked down that third running back spot, but they've been vocal that Hassan Haskins is such a good special teams guy, and so I think that Hassan Haskins has a decent chance of making the roster too for his special teams contributions. Wide receivers, okay. I don't think the Titans are going to take more than 6 wide receivers to the main roster. I don't think they're going to. But if they were, the first name I would throw out would be Kearis Jackson. Kearis Jackson, because of his ability to return and because of the new kickoff rules, I think it could be good to have 2 great returners back there. Obviously, we know Jaquan Jackson's going to be one, but Kearis Jackson had that great kick return. He was hurt against the Seahawks. I don't know what the situation is with his injury. I don't know the extent of it, but if they were going to take a 7th wide receiver, which I don't think they will, it could be Kearis Jackson so that Kearis and Jaquan can both, the Jacksons, can be back there for kickoff returns. I don't think they're going to do that, but, I have to throw it out as a possibility. Another wide receiver people talk about is Kyle Phillips. I do not think Kyle Phillips is making this roster. I actually think Kyle Phillips' days as a Titan may be coming to an end. I think he might, I think somebody else might pick him up. I just think that the injuries, obviously he's fast. He's quick, brings something to the table, but he's injury prone. Gets hurt all the time. And so I think for that reason right there, especially knowing what the Titans have done this offseason, bringing in Calvin Ridley, bringing in Tyler Boyd, you still have Burks there. Jaquan Jackson is obviously a better option at returner. So I just think because of the injuries, I would be shocked You might could put Kyle Phillips on the practice squad, but I feel like his days as a Titan might be coming to an end. And I will say, because somebody brought it up, the name Mason Kinsey. If the Titans were going to keep a seventh wide receiver, would it be Mason Kinsey? I think Kieras is still ahead of him in the pecking order because of his ability as a returner. But Mason Kinsey, I think, has probably absolutely surpassed Kyle Phillips in the pecking order. Kinsey did have a drop last week against the Seahawks, but he also had like a broken finger too. I don't want to make excuses for him, but I want to say I absolutely don't think that Mason Kinsey's making the 53-man roster. I don't think he's making it. I think he's going back to the practice squad as a quality practice squad guy. And, if the Titans were to keep a seventh wide receiver, I think it would be Kieras Jackson. But I think the next guy in line would probably be Mason Kinsey. I think he's going to the practice squad. I don't think he's making the 53. On offensive line, you've got a few options. Duron Christian. I think, obviously there's going to be more offensive linemen make the roster than the guys I said were a lock. I had 7 guys as a lock. The starting 5 plus Brunskill and Rupkich. Duron Christian is an option in terms of depth at that tackle position. Jalen Duncan is an option. Hasn't had too great of a preseason. We saw a lot of Jalen Duncan at left tackle last year. A slight improvement from Andre Dillard, but not a huge improvement from Andre Dillard. I mean, if Dillard was diarrhea, Jalen Duncan was a solid turd. I mean, that's the best way I can put it. But I lean toward Jalen Duncan probably not making this roster. But, I mean, I feel like the Titans have much more depth at that interior offensive line than they do at the tackle positions. Because you've got Brunskill, who could play center or guard. You've got Corey Levin is another guy whose name I was about to throw out. Corey Levin is a good center guard guy. Dylan Radins, who's starting right guard. If NPF were to get hurt or something, he's played some right tackle. He could provide depth there. Duron Christian, I mean, Duncan. Somebody asked, Wesson said, what about Rupkich versus Radins? I think Radins has run away with that battle. I think Radins is the guy. But there's going to be more offensive line depth. Maybe we wait and see another week of preseason, see who stands out. But I think there's some open spots on the roster for that. And then last but not least, the last option I will say is Malik Willis. Will Malik Willis get a roster spot? Pretty much, will the Titans choose to take 3 quarterbacks to the roster? Which you can do now, but and you can take 2 to the actual game, but you do have to fill a roster spot with Malik Willis if you're going to take 3 quarterbacks. I do not think the Titans are going to do that. I would love to have Malik Willis on the practice squad. I think that would be great. Malik might end up with another team. I think he has, as I said last week, Malik has improved. He's calmer. He's less chaotic when he's in there. But Mason Rudolph, as I said on Monday, there is no battle for QB2. It's Mason Rudolph's job. Can Malik Willis do good enough to where they feel the need to take all 3 to the main roster? I don't see that happening. I feel like the Titans would be better served to take 4 tight ends, keep David Martin Robinson. I think that would be more beneficial. I think keeping Hassan Haskins on the main roster to be a special teams guy could be more beneficial. I almost think keeping Kieras Jackson on the main roster to help with kick returns might be more beneficial. So I don't think they're going to take 3 quarterbacks. I think Malik either ends up on the practice squad or he ends up on somebody else's practice squad or something like that. Maybe somebody else picks him up as a backup. Maybe a team who's needing a better backup. Maybe somebody else. But I don't think Malik makes it. I don't. I think there's much more of a chance of the Titans. If it came down to it, Do you keep Malik as a third quarterback, or do you take David Martin Robinson as a fourth tight end? I think the Titans are absolutely taking David Martin Robinson over Malik Willis. If it comes down to keeping Malik Willis as a third quarterback or taking Hassan Haskins to the roster to play special teams, I think the Titans are absolutely choosing Hassan Haskins. So I think Malik Willis, I'm not going to go as far as what I said about Kyle Phillips, which was that his days as a Titan were numbered. I think Kyle Phillips, if he gets cut, I think Kyle Phillips would absolutely get picked up by somebody because of the flashes he's shown. His main issue is injuries. Malik, I'm not sure. And the Titans, I think, would be more devoted to keeping Malik around than they would Kyle Phillips because of his improvements. But we will see. Obviously, Sunday, it is Titans Saints. One more preseason game, and then the real deal is the next thing on tap. And then the 53-man roster cuts are coming on Tuesday. Titans and everybody else in the league has got big decisions to make, and who knows what's going to happen. Thank you for tuning into the Two Tone Talk podcast. We'll be back Monday at 1 Eastern, noon Central to recap the Titans-Saints game on Sunday, as well as make our final predictions for what the full 53-man roster is going to be before they come out Tuesday. And we will be here Monday. You don't want to miss that episode as the NFL regular season is knocking on the door, and it's almost time to let it in. Thank you guys for joining me for the Two Tone Talk podcast, the By God Pod. Staying way too high on the wins, way too low on the losses. Have a good day, everybody. Bye.